Hello all, good evening. Thank you so much for joining once again. Whether this is your first time joining or you're back again, thank you so much. An inspiring live stream for us tonight. But before we get to that, just send us a quick message to say what part of the world you're watching this from, just to let us know that you're out there and reading us loud and clear. So over the last 10 years, and because of my passion for smaller communities, I've had the privilege of traveling to 155 different projects around South Africa. And since 2012, with the Expedition Project, I've also visited game reserves, both private and national. So from the Kalahari to the Karoo, from Manyoni to Mapungubwe, I've had the opportunity to see this through my eyes as a South African, but also through the eyes of international volunteers that join on some of the trips that we've done. I first visited Amakhala Game Reserve and their connected Amakhala Foundation in 2012. And what struck me immediately was that they worked just as hard with their community projects as with their conservation projects. And what it made me realize is that there's really no conservation without community, and there's no conservation without community buy-in. And in short, there's no conservation without education as well. Tammy and Kathy, both from the Amakhala Foundation, have spoken previously about their environmental education and literacy projects that the foundation is doing. And as part of this series of live streams with Amakhala, tonight is part 5. So the Amakhala Foundation's health projects, and in particular, the C4 Center. So with that, I'm going to bring in Jennifer from the Amakhala Foundation. Hi, Jen.
Hello, Roger.
How are you doing today? How's lockdown life in the Eastern Cape?
Well, we've gone down to level 3 today, which means more businesses are open and travel within the province is a little easier. And some grades will go back to school in the next week.
Nice. Okay, getting there slowly, I guess. A reminder to those of you that are watching this live, you can post your questions in the comments and we'll aim to answer these, but only if you're in our actual Facebook group. So please do join and become a member if you haven't done so already. If you're watching this on replay, thanks for tuning in nonetheless. And you can still post your questions in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So Jen, I thought it would be quite a good idea to start off this live stream just to have a sort of a look back in time for a minute. One of the last times I visited a CIFO, I filmed this. Check this out.
We went door to door in the community, asked people what they thought of the center, thought of where it should go in the future. And so we came up with a new vision. We want to be the leader in this community against the fight against HIV and AIDS and the negative socioeconomic effects of the disease. We do it through uniting, involving, and engaging the community through mobilization, organization, and empowerment. And then we have 9 goals that we're pursuing as an organization. We want to develop sustainable policies, train our board and staff, develop a financial strategy, act as a place of learning for all community members, be an advocate for our community in terms of government services, work with orphans and vulnerable children, provide nutritious meals and material support to HIV-infected and affected community members, provide home-based community care, and support people living with HIV and AIDS and orphans and vulnerable children support groups to be their own independent organizations.
Wow, so I'm so excited to hand over to you and sort of see how relevant that information still is and what's obviously changed since then. So the floor is yours, Jen, over to you.
Super. Roger, thank you very much. Thank you for having me join this initiative of yours of sharing some of our stories. Just to create a little bit of background, the NPO that we're talking about this evening is known as the Asipo Charity Trust. It functions in the little town of Patterson, which is the closest town to Amakhala Game Reserve. And there are probably about 5 to 10,000 people living in that small town. Asipo began on the ground with David and Cindy, started it in 2008. And initially they thought they were going to help some adults develop some skills, but they ended up realizing that there was a huge need to support and provide for vulnerable children in the community, particularly at the time those affected by HIV and AIDS, infected or affected. And so that's where their story began. In 2008, 2009, Amakhala Foundation started partnering with them in some of the work that they did, and most particularly, they needed some premises of their own, and that's really where we started helping and partnering with them. We were able to secure a property that the trust now owns and that ISIPO functions out of, and Will was showing us the goals and the objectives of the organization in that very building. And you will have noticed on the video, he mentions that one of the goals is for the organization to be a leader in the community in which they find themselves, in terms of assisting and helping vulnerable children and people in the community. And I certainly believe that they are reaching that very goal. David and Cindy are the project managers of ISIPO, and they have been so right from the beginning. There's always a reliance on grants from funding organizations to do the work that they do. And so the volume of work that they do changes as funding is or isn't available. But in summary of what they do, they have a team of healthcare and childcare workers that work within the community. So when I visit the center, I hardly ever see those people because they're out visiting children in their homes and family members and assisting where they can there. Then at the center, just for people who haven't been there, there's a playground, there's two classrooms, there's a library, there's offices, there's a kitchen, and there's also a room for activities that the children can use depending on what program they're attending in the afternoon. So there's between 300 and 400 children that are on the lists that ISIPO help. But then there's different degrees of need of each of those children. So they are assessed by the organization and helped as necessary. So some children will benefit just with material support, like back to school supplies and school uniforms. Others who are more vulnerable will also be part of the feeding scheme, where they go to the center each day and receive a meal. So there's varying means of support that are provided. The organization also offers a wonderful aftercare program, so the children can go there after school in the afternoons. And sometimes it's just a safe environment for them to be in, and it's free play, and they enjoy their time there in the afternoon and possibly have a meal if they're on the feeding scheme. Other times there's more structured activities where the Amakhala volunteers might be there to play sport, or we've recently, over the last year with Kathy, introduced a literacy program for foundation phase children, the younger children. So they might be attending their literacy program there in the afternoons. So there's plenty of activity going on at the center. In terms of how we fit in and partner and walk alongside ISIPO, as I mentioned, we were heavily involved with securing the property that they operate from. Two of the Amakhala Foundation board members also sit on the board at ISIPO, so we offer some strategic support. We also offer limited financial support. Most often, we just try and fill the gaps of funding that they don't get. For example, they often get funding for the caregivers and for feeding scheme programs, but then within that there isn't funding for the bookkeepers and the auditing and keeping the office running, things like that. So that's where we try and assist from a financial point of view. And then obviously with our volunteer program, which is part of the bigger Amakhala picture, they are instrumental in the aftercare program, helping with the children in the afternoons, and they've also helped try and set up a vegetable garden, which then puts produce into the kitchen for the feeding scheme. At the moment, Obviously, their activities are very limited in lockdown. Although I spoke to David this afternoon, and there are some children that have permission to come and be part of the feeding scheme every day, and their healthcare workers are also have permits to work within the community during lockdown. So that sort of summarizes where they are and what they're up to at the moment.
Oh, it's amazing. So how long have you guys been running now?
So ISIPO started in about 2005, and they first of all started functioning out of a couple of municipal office buildings that weren't being used. And then in 2008, the municipality were going to need those buildings, and they needed to find space to work, to operate from independently. And so our involvement got heavily more from 2008.
Okay. And I see as a question come through, which is actually something I was going to ask as well, so may as well pop that up. Tanya wants to know sort of what ages are the children that you're actually working with?
Okay, so there's a very wide range of ages. The two creche, they run early childhood development. They have a little early childhood development center. So some places call that a creche. So those are the sort of 2.5-year-olds to 4 turning 5, and then once they're 5, they will go to the school across the road to start their formal schooling. The afternoon program covers a wide range of ages of children. So the littlies at the creche are there most of the day, and then anything from 6 to 18, the children, once they finish school, will come across to the center. So we have the whole spectrum of age groups.
Wow. And then a follow-up question from her, just while we're at it, says, has level 3 made things, well, is it going to make things a little bit easier for you now?
I think it will. Initially, when we were on level 5 and everything was very heavily locked down, the organization was given a permit to operate, but that was really just with helping with health cases, following up on people taking long-term treatment that they needed to see on a daily basis, and a very few vulnerable children coming to the center once a day. Now on level 3, it is a little bit easier. The staff can move around the town as they need to, and a few more of the children can come to the center if they need to as well. So yes, it has eased it. It will ease it up a little bit from today.
Okay, fantastic. Plenty more questions to ask, and then I'm gonna post, and then I'm gonna go through some photos as well, and some then and now as well. But we're gonna take a little ad break, so to speak, just to show you guys what we're going to be doing next Monday.
We are making a real difference for conservation in the community by conducting effective science through daily observational data to translate into evidence-based conservation initiatives and legislation. Conservation projects for the survival of the African penguin, supporting community education, building effective tourism and conservation partnerships, fundraising towards research, conservation and education. Our key projects are African penguin conservation, which includes a nest project providing critical protection during the penguin fledgling stage, and in 2015 we opened a rehabilitation facility, the African Penguin and Seabird Sanctuary. Invaluable research on great white sharks by marine biologists includes tagging and tracking, behavioral surveys, wound healing, environmental parameter monitoring, and population studies. We support whale and dolphin research. We handle all marine animal rescue, strandings, and sampling on our coastline. Our environmental education program, known as DEEP, educates a dedicated group of young learners for 3 years, measuring the impact and growth of each individual. Marine pollution efforts include the unique fishing line bin project and monthly beach cleanups. The Dye Island ecosystem is unique and fragile, and it is a priority of marine dynamics to ensure the marine life in the area flourish and remain for many years to come.
Fantastic. So that's coming up next Monday. I'm really excited. I actually want to dive into a few things. I know one of the things I want to talk about is some of the success stories you've had, and obviously ways of how people can get involved and help, whether it's obviously in person or, with tourism being restricted and stuff like that, how they can still get involved. But I wonder if we could, Jen, could we take a look back at some of the sort of old photos and compare some then and now? And just see if we can get some sort of viewpoints from you. I've got one of the beading project that we took way back, and then you sent me through a recent photo there. So has things changed much on the beading project side?
Not a lot. It's I'm tempted to say it's a very robust project in terms of of its longevity and just that the children enjoy it so much. Yeah. What happens is that once a week, the beading group get together and they make beaded bracelets that we then sell in all the shops on the game reserve in the lodges. And each it's more aimed at the teenagers, although it is spreading across the age groups. They earn a little bit of pocket money for the bracelets that they make, and then also a quarter of the sale price of the bracelets goes into a bursary fund that we then use for some tertiary training for the students once they get to that level. And yeah, it's been such a success that it just carries on. The way they bead is still the same. The type of bracelets they make is still the same. They still continue to sell. So yeah, it's much the same. When we very first started it, we aimed it at the girls, and quite quickly into the whole project, we realized the boys wanted to join in. So
they pretend they're not interested, and they actually are, aren't they?
Yeah. They were quick to say we're just as keen to bead. So yes, the group, obviously as the children grow up and leave school, they stop beading, but yeah, there's still a group that beads, each and every week.
Amazing. And then sports. I mean, we all know like sports breaks down so many barriers and such a big part of so many community projects. Is that still quite a big part of what you guys do as well?
Yes, very much so. So there's, I think wherever there's a ball, a group of children are just happy and find it great to play. So yes, there's still sport that's happening. I know that one of the volunteers who came not so long ago, one of his big things was he was here to play soccer with the kids. So yeah.
Is soccer still the sort of the top sport, or does it really does it change from time to time?
It does change from time to time, but yeah, soccer wins over most.
All right. Okay. So let's have a look at some photos, some of the more recent photos you've sent through, and maybe you can talk us through some of them. How about this one?
Okay. So this was the volunteers just playing some fun games in the afternoon. You can see it was nice and sunny. It was a hot summer's day, and they were playing goose duck, which I think is a fairly universal game. And for a lot of the children at the aftercare center, it's just having people visit them and show interest in them and who they are and what they do and where they go to school. It's really an important part of the psychosocial support that goes on at the center. So they never get tired of playing games with the volunteers.
Definitely. Okay. How about this one? Looks like a volunteer chatting to some of the kids.
Yes. So there's also, with the literacy program, we try to introduce telling more story, developing an enjoyment of reading that Kathy was talking about last week. And so just sharing a story or chatting and interacting with the volunteers.
So presumably, the volunteers does make up a big part of the success of a SIPO. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Yes, it does. They are such a They play a really important role in lots of aspects. They are very useful in terms of pairs of hands and getting things done. For example, this group of volunteers that we're looking at now did a major overhaul of the vegetable garden. It's very difficult to grow vegetables in the height of summer here because Patterson's very short of water and it gets very hot. But as the summer cools off, the vegetable garden gets revamped and replanted. And just having all those willing pairs of hands gets the job done so quickly. They also, because they interact with the kids at the aftercare program, they provide a lot of that psychosocial support that I was talking about, just allowing the kids to have the feeling that there's somebody there that cares for them and is prepared to give them some time.
Amazing. Yes, while we're speaking about volunteers, is there a particular kind of volunteer that is best suited to working on this kind of project?
Just somebody with some enthusiasm, a bit of an open mind to what might need doing. And obviously you need to like children because they really like you when you get there at the center. So if you're not too keen on kids, it's a hard task to be part of that. But other than that, no, there's no formal qualifications that are needed.
Okay, let's have a look at what questions we got coming in. So Hein from Nkondo says, are you planning any COVID-19 training or awareness type classes?
So obviously the staff of ASIPA are very well versed with being aware and training and wearing masks, which is compulsory here, and things like that. Obviously we're going to have to work out how it's going to work once the center is more formally open. So it's only open for the few children that really need support at the moment, and each of those children have been helped to try and understand as fully as possible about washing hands and keeping apart and wearing a mask. But obviously as the levels decrease, we are going to have to consider some more formal training of once the groups are allowed to interact a bit more.
Of course. And Tanya says, fantastic assistance for children, this that you're doing right now. And it is amazing, Jen. I remember the first 2 times that I visited you guys, I was in awe of the work that we've been doing, but just the wide range of stuff. I mean, we've heard from Tammy about environmental education. We've heard from Kathy about the literacy project, and then obviously ASIFO, which is more sort of health related and stuff like that. What is the stigma around sort of HIV and AIDS in the community at the moment? What is it like?
This is quite a hard question for me to answer. I think there's a lot more sort of acceptance and less stigma than there was certainly when you were here. One of the bigger health challenges in the community now is the resurgence of TB, and then keeping to the protocols of the TB treatment. And so that's actually what a lot of the healthcare workers based at ASIPO, the community carers, are doing at the moment, is helping people with their TB medication and making sure that it's administered and taken correctly. So that is more of the emphasis on the health section at the moment.
Okay. And have you had any, doesn't have to be along that line, but any success stories now that, you've obviously been running such a long time that some of the kids that you worked with in the past are now adults. Have you got any success stories that you've seen?
Yeah, we do have a few. We have, so there's 3 brothers that have been helped by the organization for a very long time. And the oldest had obtained a bursary and did some security training in the security sector. And then he was given a bursary and did some training as a canine dog handler. And he's now the canine dog handler of our anti-poaching unit on Amakhala, which is wonderful. Amazing. And then the middle brother, he also secured some a bursary, and he's done a diploma in in office administration. He unfortunately, it's been difficult to get him some placement experience, and with COVID now, that there's a bit of a pause on that, but it looks like there might be some additional funding for programs coming into SEPO, and perhaps he can be in the office working there for a while. And then the youngest brother's still at school. So there are some stories starting to tell out now of kids that have come right through the care of the organization and moved into their adult life and found employment.
That is fantastic when you've got to a point in an organization where you can start to see cycles go through. I mean, that must really show how effective the impact has been. Otherwise it's quite hard to judge, I guess.
Yes, it is. It is quite hard to judge until you've got that length of time and can see some of the successes coming through. But it is. It's lovely for me to watch from the side, and so I'm sure for David and Cindy, it's very rewarding.
So how could someone go about assisting a SEPO in particular? I suppose two parts to this question. One, in the times that we're facing now, where travel is so restricted. And the second part of the question, I guess, would be moving forward when travel's a bit more open. Is it simply just a matter of volunteering? Are there sort of ways to donate directly as well? Does stuff like that help?
Yes, donating directly always helps, because there's always something that they're wanting to do that isn't covered by the funding that's available, whether it's a few extra children or whether it's something in the library or something like that. In terms of when things open up, donations of clothing or books are always useful, particularly like school stationery. As the Amakhala Foundation, we collect school stationery all year, and then that goes into part of the back to school program that SEPO do in January for us, because our academic year starts in January, of just helping with schooling stationery supplies. And then when travel's available, they never say no to a visit from anybody, the staff and the kids. So just somebody going to visit and showing interest in what's happening is always uplifting for everybody.
So Ep.3 has just sent through from Amakhala Volunteers, just said she loves the volunteers. People will arrive with shyness, but then they leave as being full part of the experience, which is amazing. No, it's incredible. And then, I mean, I guess when you're looking for fundraising and stuff like that, is it a matter of you're applying directly for grants? Do you run specific campaigns? Are you selling stuff like the beads and stuff to generate funding as well? What are some of the different levels of you surviving and generating some?
So in terms of, I'll sort of chat about it in terms of the SEPO and what they do. So they do apply for grants, and at the moment they're just having their healthcare worker grant renewed, which is fantastic, because there was some uncertainty about whether it was going to be renewed with the COVID situation and things like that carrying on. So there are some bigger grants with international organizations and the Department of Social Development and Department of Health in South Africa that they apply for funding. And then obviously, as I mentioned, Amakhala Foundation put in small amounts of financial assistance to just fill some of the gaps to ensure that those grants can be carried on long term. And then on the ground, the staff are very have an entrepreneurial spirit, so they do a little bit of traditional beading that they sell in the community, and then obviously there's the bracelets that fall into the teenagers' hands of creating some pocket money for themselves. And then if they get a donation of any clothing that is unsuitable for the children that they care for and who need clothing, they have a little sort of second-hand shop for the broader community of Paterson, where the adults can go and purchase clothing, and then those funds are generated into what the children need. For example, school shoes. You're never going to get a huge donation of school shoes, but if you sell some of the adult clothing that you don't really need, you can buy the school shoes for the children who need them. So there's a few initiatives like that they do. They've also had a volunteer who helped them set up a whole chicken house, and chickens. So the eggs that come from those chickens go directly into the feeding scheme, into the kitchen. Yeah,
I do remember one thing which struck me as being like really impressive, and you often see when community projects start up, they'll set up under the notion of they know what to do, rather than really getting the community to build into the process and become almost like integrated into the development of what a center like yours should be. And like I showed in the video earlier, obviously what you guys have done is you've gone into the community and found out exactly what it is that the community wants and needs, and you've almost developed it slowly around that.
Yeah, I think that credit must definitely go to David. He arrived in Paterson from Grahamstown with the vision of working with community members and providing upliftment, but he thought he needed to work with the adults and upskill adults in like leather work and bead work, and for them to generate income through crafting those kind of products. And while doing that, he realized he wasn't gaining a lot of traction with the adults with that idea. And there were always a few children hanging around who kind of, were vulnerable and needed assistance. And so he saw that need and responded to it. So yes, it grew out of a very real need rather than what was thought was needed.
Yeah.
But all credit to David for that.
It's amazing. Jen, I guess to sort of round this off, what would be the number one action that someone watching this either live or on replay could do to help? What's the one thing you need right now? What would you say if you were to have to pick? Is that a difficult question?
Difficult question because funding is always such an issue about, a monetary fund, a monetary donation is always well spent at ISIPO. But I think probably, having said that, when you're sitting at home wondering, well, what can you do? Just sharing the story with other people who might be inspired to help or to visit one day is as valuable to the whole project. Yeah, and to the longevity of the project.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to cover? Anything else you want to talk about or share?
I don't think so, other than just saying, it's been a really interesting journey walking alongside ISIPO all these years and watching what they have achieved in challenging circumstances often, and they're a real example of just never giving up, no matter when it seems that there is no grants coming in. There's things are tough. There's lots of children to try and help. They are a really good example of never giving up, and that you can eat an elephant if you just take one bite at a time.
Yeah, amazing. No, look, I mean, I've always been so inspired by what you guys have done, and you've always had such a collaborative approach, which is amazing, and it's exactly what myself with the Expedition Project, it's what it's been all about as well, is really sharing those success stories, and you've got so many success stories to share. So just congratulations. Thank you so much for chatting and all of this. And we'll chat again soon, and we'll have some more updates as we go. Anyone
Yes.
wants to find out more, get involved, you can go straight to Amakhala Foundation, or you can check Amakhala Foundation out on the Expedition Project site, or just feel free to ask any more questions you want, so if you need specifics on how to get involved. Jen, thank you so much again. It's been great chatting, and we'll speak to you soon.
It's a pleasure, and thank you very much for hosting us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. So as I mentioned, next week we've got another great live stream. We're doing these live streams every Monday now at 6 p.m. BST or 7 p.m. South African time. So please do join in. Keep spreading the word. Keep sharing the love. Just thank you so much for tuning in again tonight. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you so much.
We are making a real difference for conservation in the community by conducting effective science through daily observational data to translate into evidence-based conservation initiatives and legislation, conservation projects for the survival of the African penguin, supporting community education, building effective tourism and conservation partnerships, fundraising towards research, conservation and education. Our key projects are African penguin conservation, which includes a nest project providing critical protection during the penguin fledgling stage. And in 2015, we opened a rehabilitation facility, the African Penguin and Seabird Sanctuary. Invaluable research on great white sharks by marine biologists includes tagging and tracking, behavioral surveys, wound healing, environmental parameter monitoring, and population studies. We support whale and dolphin research. We handle all marine animal rescue, strandings, and sampling on our coastlines. Our environmental education program, known as DEEP, educates a dedicated group of young learners for 3 years, measuring the impact and growth of each individual. Marine pollution efforts include the unique fishing line bin project and monthly beach cleanups. The Dye Island ecosystem is unique and fragile, and it is a priority of marine dynamics to ensure the marine life in the area flourish and remain for many years to come.